Okay, the idea of opening up this debate and to open up these ideas was to tell those who have just come in and those who had been here since the morning that we are here due to a project called Sheroes in Games, and that together with Luján Oulton, we have been coordinating in pushed forward by the Goethe-Institut, which has united several countries so that each of them from this multiplicity of perspectives can generate more tangible ideas to approach specific challenges, to say that women are here from diverse places, but we want to develop ourselves and we must do so. Without further ado, we will show you what we've been working with our panelists. The whole of Latin America is here: Peru, Chile, Venezuela, Colombia, Brazil, Germany, of course, Mexico. I don't know whether I forgot somebody. We've been working for 3 days here, continuing with work that began in April of last year. The challenge we had was to think about how we can narrow the gender gap. And the conclusion was that we need to reach girls. Part of what our colleagues were talking about before is that there are levels of knowledge, and that this universe that is so broad when we talk about video games and everything that surrounds it, that's why we're speaking about a universe and not a world, because it is a system that encompasses this discipline and different fields such as education, technology, medicine, research. And that's how we structured it, because we didn't know how to go to get this macrocosm to go into a web space. And so it would reach more and more people in various places in the world. And we were during the pandemic. So everything was digital and virtual. A website was too small for the amount of content that we had to share and the amount of voices. And Juli had the fantastic idea of having a wiki semantic. And what does this mean? And many of us asked what that meant. And it means it operates on the basis of the construction of collaborative work. Who has heard about Wikipedia? All of us, of course. Do you trust the information contained therein? Would you cite it? Would you? There is a lot of no's as well. Did you know that Wikipedia for many years had to deal with this, how to validate that the knowledge that's constructed by people and that is outside an academic realm or a place that validates it as truth, that this information actually reaches us with real facts and not mediated, as Valeria was saying before, the story told by whom, who tells the story. So in that sense, what Wikipedia did was to reach the solution of wanting to think about collaboration and to have people who actively review and people who validate that knowledge. So that's how you build a network. And that's where Sheroes in Games, we thought it's many countries that are involved, many people. How about if we really want to reach more girls and more women, and we can have more collaborators and building and feeding into this system so that we can all validate the fact that this is so. What is the percentage of women who is a role model in the gaming industry? Who could we follow as an example? I am a teacher and I think, where can I take information to motivate my girls? Because one of the things that happens sometimes is it is complex to be accessible when information is so specific, such as motivating women in the technology field. The challenge, therefore, was how to put all that content together, how to make it accessible, how to create a community through time. Now you're getting to know it right now. This is the first official presentation launch. The wiki is still closed to this group, but in November, it will be open for anybody who wants to see it. And how is it built today? What did we think this wiki should have? And through that collaborative idea with all of the team made up of the different countries who are here and the team that are present here that traveled here to see each other and talk and to show all of our projects and to be able to share it with everybody. We felt that this macro universe of video games could be encompassed in a book. We've thought of it as a big book, and this big book could be 4 chapters that are divided and that divide the content, the categories. In this sense, we thought of 4 big content. Chapter 1, the industry of video games, the development of video games. Number 2, chapter 3, how to teach about video games. And chapter 4, which is probably the most important because it is related to a lot of what we've been speaking about in the last panel and what we, in the last talk, defined, which is the chapter to do with networking, lobbying, and communication, which is important to add more girls and women to the industry. Because although Sheroes in Game, our goal is to open up a space and to give girls the space and to allow them to think about the chance of choosing a career in this. Because as they were saying before, the woman from this company was saying before that they cannot find women to fill the position. So the end audience are girls, but this is for people who want to support girls and to open doors for them. So teachers, mediators, trainers, parents, what should they know? Let's go chapter by chapter with a brief summary. First of all, what do we speak about when we talk about video games? It says video game industry there. It is more global and less detailed. What does that encompass nowadays? What would you like to know about video games? Does anybody have a question with regards to this to see if we can answer it? It is like an oracle. For example, legal aspects. Mika, you must help us fill that part. That's one of the ones that's not very complete yet, very comprehensive. As if there are any lawyers here that you can contribute. Women leaders, for example. I think we have Mika on that. So we have started to fill it up. We forgot to say the wiki is going to be in 4 languages. We're just seeing it in Spanish here for Latin America. So you're seeing Puerto Rico, Peru, Colombia, Argentina. But of course, we will have it in German, in English, and in Portuguese. We will dominate the world. At this point, we should also state that one of the other elements we're working with at the wiki is how we will speak to people, because who is our audience? Our audience, is it the family, parents, tutors? Are we speaking to teachers? Or are we speaking to women, girls, or leaders, or people who within organizations might say we need to do a workshop to motivate more women to develop video games and technology? so they can explore this field. Part of this idea is to begin to build this network. And at this point, it will be a work in progress. We will be, as Wikipedia did it once upon a time, we are adding to that open source collaborative tool to be able to build this knowledge bit by bit. Since we have our partners, let's have them collaborate. One of the things we looked at in this travel, I wanted to show you a bit of the workshops. You could show them a bit of that. You're spoiling what I was going to say. That's a spoiler. We said industry development of video games, which is the different instances that make up a video game. What are the portions that are there? All of the parts that, in fact, it is a complex chapter because it's very big. It encompasses a lot of elements and not all of them are dynamically articulated. So we debate, where should we put this content? Where should we put this video? That's part of opening up the debate and saying, how will we generate the fact that this knowledge may be understandable for more people? So that's why we are doing this catalog, this division, and generating this index so that it is easier for people to understand how you make up a video game and how you can teach it. There's a theoretical and a practical part. So the tools should be here. Teaching has to do with methodology, with giving tips and tools and advice for teachers who would like to work on this so that every single one of them can make up their own toolkit for teaching. And they've been working on templates that were like a sort of successful toolkit. Because if we're speaking about opening up knowledge, we're also talking about the fact that we can generate packaged instances and solutions so that anybody, anywhere in the world who don't know the steps to be able to carry out a workshop that is effective and successful, because one thing is to speak about science and video games, and the other thing is to teach girls or even teenagers who come from a different perspective. How do we motivate them so that they sit down and say, okay, let us develop something, let us generate an idea. And for girls, if they get to this wiki, they can themselves bring this proposal forward. Why can't, yeah, you could go to your school and say, I've got the guide here. Why can't we work with video games? You were talking about workshops. I like the fact, the scratch by Steph, but this is even better. Let's open it. Coding with Scratch, coding with Scratch. This was in German, but the idea is to enrich our perspective and to say we may take the same tool that we use here in Peru, in Bolivia, it was replicated, or perhaps in Chile or Brazil, and that can also be used in Germany, and how the different strategies can enrich and perhaps get a new idea for a workshop, how this workshop toolkit operates. This happens a lot in the process that we speak over each other, so that we have a suggestion to say this works, this didn't work, so that we can skip certain steps. So we generated this sort of form that says how long the workshop was, which group did you apply to, whether it was 20 people or 50 people online, like the case that happened with the girls in Bolivia that were massive workshops, and also in Brazil with numerous people coming. And they did, and if you have something face to face, it might be more reduced, and within the different contexts will be varied. Some people will have access to more things. Maybe I'll have to think of something analogical. If I don't have so many hardware tools, how can I create and organize a workshop to motivate them to learn video games? Also, the idea that is in process is that we will have channels. We'll have an HIE from Sheroes in Games. So every time you do a workshop, you can upload your game, and this can make your work visible. This is very nice for the creators as well, because they can see it from anywhere in the world and anybody can play it. Those resources are linked within the same workshop. And in this case, we're going to go into one of the ones that the girls were developing in Germany. Each hyperlink takes you to an element of our toolkit, to a toolkit element, because each of these resources is called elements within our toolkit. And you can go in and you can see all of the detail. What is the goal of this toolkit element or this resource? What is the duration of application, the type of license that is needed, which is very important when you're speaking about open source collaborative tools. And of course, the resource that may be a video or perhaps a PDF or any material that is detailed on a PowerPoint or a slide that is open and up to everybody to design. And finally, and very importantly, we have on top of everything that is workshop elements, the lobby elements. So how to generate networks that can, with the right language, what do we mean by right language? With a language that can show that we are speaking to women and girls and motivating them to say what it can bring them, or how we can tell teachers. If I want to train teachers, for example, I am a leader of an institution, and I say, I want my teachers to have the training so they can reach more girls and women. What should they know about gender? And that is part of our lobbying element, where you will find many resources, as you can see, which will be in several languages, and therefore you will be able to select it. And that within what we want to do with women, girls, or with people who will come to train, they will find the lobby element that can suit the content, to give them the tools to be able to justify the courses that they want to do, and to explain why these spaces are necessary, why we must open the doors for girls, and why is it important to work from a gender perspective, what kind of organizations you can go for funding, and what other places. And people are doing the same. All of those strategies and content allow you to enable. One of the last aspects to mention is a navigational field that we are developing, which we consider will be important, especially contemplating the differences when it comes to language, because how can we speak about inclusion in Spanish? Do we have different kinds of Spanish from Spain, all of the variables in Latin America? And in that sense, how do we generate inclusion? And as the panel was discussing, so that the content that reaches is the right one and is speaking to them. It doesn't always say the men player, the scientist, male. So each of these elements from the toolkit have a series of items where we approach specific gender issues. And when you want to find specific things, you can access them through a menu that has been specially designed for that to facilitate, depending upon the goal that you want to achieve. Is there any questions, anything you want to talk about? There's a hand up. Please get the mic to the back for the interpreters and the streaming to be able to. Can you hear me? Welcome. One question. I work in design and illustration for video games. I went to a jam and a lot of the girls there told me that they were interested in going into video games, but they didn't know how to do it. I told them YouTube channels, etc. But I wanted to ask whether this page is already uploaded because I was a bit late, and I saw at the beginning that there was a kind of glossary of how to set up a video game. Can they go into this and investigate? And that would be fantastic if it was. It will be soon. You will find out if you follow us, Goethe, or us, or any of the panelists. The first point of advice is to look for a community. Women, femdevs in Peru, there are different spaces to generate contact. Sheroes in games. This is for teachers and trainers because it has a ton of content that will be good for them, and even templates. That's true. And the idea of being here and to doing this event and for everybody to participate, our partners of the different countries who are here, is to say that we have reached this point in June, and soon we will develop more workshops for women and girls in July and August, a game jam specifically in September in the different countries simultaneously, so that then with all of that data, because that is to build knowledge, we will get information and collect information to optimize the interface, to optimize how this space feels, so that it is as simple as possible for anybody to go through, no matter whether they know the medium or whether they are good in technology, and so that it is then accessible for anyone. But tangibly in Sheroes in Game within the Goethe website, you can see this evolution and you may find out about the activities.
Do you have any other questions? The auditorium is big. Hello, how are you doing? I'm a translator, and I'd like to know how you would integrate translation in this wiki. And talking about gender issues, I have colleagues who have already developed glossaries, gender glossaries, and they have shared them with other colleagues in our profession. There are many women that are interested in gaming from the translation side. And we can help from the semantics and language side. I'd like to know how all of this integrates with you, with the wiki. Do translators also exist? Yes, they're extremely necessary. And that's something that called us our attention so much. There are many localization professionals joining the industry. Do you mean the Spanish glossary for video games where that Caro Panero belongs to? Yes, that has been a great challenge. We are working on that, and let's continue our conversation. The purpose of this presentation was precisely that, to show you what was ongoing and also to open the space up for those who are willing to join it. As I mentioned earlier, it's available in 4 languages. Many queries arose in connection with translation because there is a lot of content that we may find in Spanish, but if we translate it literally to German, for example, it makes no sense. That's why we talked about various contexts, the diversity of contexts. Rather than having just one answer or one challenge, there are many things that need to be addressed. That's why we need to have a diverse and eclectic and extended look from the different collaborations and stances. So we will have content that will need to be translated literally from one language to the other, but then there will be content in one language and new content will need to be generated because it will not be the same if a literal translation is done. And that's why translators are so important. They are key for this to be totally accessible. Another thing that we discussed is for it to be accessible for auditive purposes, so that no characters are used that would prevent automatic transcription. Okay, we are nearing the end. Thank you very much for having attended this session. Remember that there's the exhibition or the exhibit until 7 p.m. as well as the university room. And tomorrow there are 8 international games. One of them was developed by Laura Palavecino, who was part of the first panel. And I'd like to thank our partners. Please stand up. They have come from Bolivia, Chile, Peru, Colombia, Venezuela, Germany. They have come here to support us. Thank you so much for being here to present this project. I'd like to thank you all for having listened to us. I'd like to thank the people who are listening to us remotely. Thank you so much for the space. I'd like to thank the Goethe-Institut for sponsoring this project, for planting the seed for it to grow, for this lush tree to grow. Welcome you all to Sheroes in Games. Thank you.